Okay, so first you're going to want to remove this axle nut like so. Next you want to get your 17 millimeter and remove the two bolts from the back that is holding the caliper to the knuckle. Here they are, one right here and another one on the bottom. You'll see it right there. Once you get the whole entire caliper off, you can just set it off to the side like so. Next you want to remove the rotor from the knuckle. For my car I have Mini Cooper rotors because I have the OEM Bit Brake Kit, but normally you have to remove the screw holding the rotor from the knuckle. As you can see, I am removing the cotter pins from the lower ball joint, upper control arm, and from the tie rod end. Once all three cotter pins are removed, you will use the 17 to remove the nut. Well, actually you don't remove it, you unscrew it and you keep it on so whenever you're banging it doesn't really drop. Well, when you're banging the lower control arm it doesn't drop, and you would do the same for the upper control arm as you see I'm doing right now. Be sure to keep the outer tie rod connected to the knuckle. It's going to help stabilize the knuckle from moving side to side as you're banging the lower and upper control arm. If you haven't touched this knuckle in a while, you will have to bang the lower control arm and the upper control arm area pretty hard to get both areas loose. Now I am removing the other cotter pin from the outer control arm, and that is also a 17. And there you have it. The whole entire knuckle is removed. Now we can move on to the next step of removing the hub off the knuckle. Now, I will admit this whole entire process of removing the hub and the bearing from the knuckle did take me roughly around 30 minutes. I do recommend bringing it to a press if you can. It'll just speed up the whole entire process. After you remove that hub, you will have a retaining ring holding in the bearing. Get some snap ring pliers and remove that retaining ring. Here I will be kind of struggling to get this bearing out. It took me a good bit. I do recommend either going to AutoZone and getting that tool to press out the bearing, or bringing it to a press, of course. But it is possible. What I'm showing here is another piece of the bearing that got stuck onto the hub. This is why I recommend whenever you're buying a new bearing is to buy a new hub, because this process can be pretty lengthy, and if you don't have the right tool to basically pry it off, it can be pretty difficult. In the next few minutes, do not follow my lead. This is not what you're supposed to do at all. I'll be doing some sketchy stuff, not gonna lie. If you have a new hub, you can skip to 6 minutes and 50 seconds and it goes to where I am pressing in the new bearing. By the way, I did buy a new hub just in case this process did not work, but I wanted to experiment. So yeah, for those who say you should just buy a new hub, I did buy a new hub, but you'll see I got this off. It did take a good bit though, and a lot of elbow grease. Do this at your own risk. I'm saying that because you will have a high possibility of damaging the hub. So yeah, like I said, I was experimenting and I wanted to see how well this process would go. So yes. So I did end up getting that inner piece of the bearing off of the hub with some minor scratches on the outside of that hub. So I did actually end up reusing this hub. I wanted to see how well it will last or if I'd have any problems pressing in the new bearing onto the old hub. So as you can see, it is possible, but like I said, do it at your own risk. I do recommend just buying a new one. It's just easier and faster. I did end up bringing the knuckle to a mechanic shop to get that bearing, the new bearing, pressed in. Yeah, I was not going to use a hammer to bang it in, and I did not feel like buying an AutoZone press. And it's just more efficient to bring it to a press instead. After you get that snap ring in, you're going to want to have something holding the bottom, the inner bearing, so you as you're pressing in the hub, because the bearing itself has two pieces, and so you're going to want to have the bottom part of that bearing held in place so it doesn't separate as you're pressing in the hub, the new hub, of course. And once that's pressed in, you're basically done. Installing the knuckle and the whole entire assembly is pretty self-explanatory, so I did not take a video.